Today, we are going to be talking about leadership, and we want you to stay tuned because this is going to be an important podcast, especially for you if you're a young leader, of what you need to do, who you need to look for in a mentor, and how to be accountable. So, Todd, we're going to be talking about leadership today. So, let's talk about what has changed over the 30 years of all of your leadership skills. What has changed over those years when you first started becoming a leader and where you are today?
What a great man. My mind goes down memory lane of 30 years of leadership. I started I'd like to think I was leading even in high school,
Mhm.
college, and the different things. I was in athletics, and then college I was into fraternity, and leadership things are being developed and honed. But I came out of college into a corporate job and spent about 7 years in the corporate world before I got into ministry. And then I've been in ministry now for 23, 24 years. And like any person who's developing, I think those early years it's a combination of discovery. Who am I? What kind of leader am I? And a little bit faking it. As you're discovering, you're kind of going, oh, who do I want to be? Okay, now I'm going to try to be that person, but am I really that kind of person?
Mhm.
And I think the joy of developing, when you allow the process of development to actually happen, you can enjoy every season. And
Mhm.
when I look back at what has been developing, what developing has looked like in my life, I really do feel like there were certainly moments where I felt striving more. I was in the corporate job, wanted to climb the corporate ladder, wanted to do that. But then God had a very clear moment. I felt called into ministry vocationally, got open doors for that. And as that happened, there's a settling that begins to kind of take place. And I guess in my own process of development, the confidence and security of who I am, who God's created me to be. I don't think I led early on as an insecure leader, but you also, as you're discovering who you are, there's only so much you have in terms of confidence. And I think the joy of letting God form, mold you, you sort of wrestle with him at times to discover, who am I? And kind of a really interesting question of like, who am I? And I have part of that understanding today, but we all want to be growing and developing. So I can't
Mhm.
rest on that. Hey, here's who I am. Well, this is how I am. This is how I'm designed and wired. I can't. Well, no, that thought process can speak to, well, therefore I don't develop or I don't look to change. So
Mhm.
how you rest with the tension that is, I'm comfortable and content with how God has wired me. And also, I'm constantly being pulled to development and growth and become all God has designed me to be, that I know even at my current stage of life. I'm not there. I think we're all
Mhm.
developing. I think one of the encouragements I got from my grandfather, as he was in his late 70s at the time, I remember hearing him talk about what he felt like God was showing him. And I remember
Wow.
thinking, you're 80, almost 80 years old. How are you still learning things? That was my perspective at that time. But it's settled in to go, man, what a blessing to watch someone old in life go, I'm
Mhm.
still learning. I'm still growing. God's still revealing things to me. So I'll pause there, or at least stop there, that monologue about the last 30 years. But I think there's a joy in letting God take you through a process, and
Mhm.
not fast forwarding, not trying to preempt the process. Um, anyway, so many biblical examples that we could get into of what processes look like. So anyway, there's
And
some initial
hope and
thoughts.
ho- yeah, and hopefully we'll get into some of those. I love that you said that your grandfather was still learning because I think that's true. Like you and I talked before the program, we talked about how we're how we're still like going. I know less now than I did 20
Right.
years ago or 30 years ago, and that's just absolutely true. And I
Mm,
think that it comes through that process, what you're talking about of us growing in our character. We just tend to we realize that God is just so much bigger than the
mm.
little bubble we put him in when we're in our 20s. We
Isn't that
see
right?
and we just see everything so small and
Mm,
the world is even small. We're in that box still, because
yeah,
we're just little puppets, we're just repeating what we've heard and are
exactly.
doing what we've seen and thinking, "Oh, that looks cool. We'll go do that." And then but we don't understand the bones behind it are what why they did it this way, or
Mm.
why did our bosses do it this way, or our leaders do it this way. And so we have to ask
Yes.
those questions, why? So, okay, next question. So we're
Hmm.
seeing a lot of young leaders come up, which is awesome. We need the young leaders so that we can attract the next generation into our careers or in our churches. But I feel like some of them are kind of skipping some steps. So I know you guys
Hmm.
have an executive leadership program that you're teaching, and I think that's so vital. So tell me some of
Yeah.
the steps that you use in order to help these young people become all
Mm.
that they need to be.
Yeah, I think there's great joy I have in the thought of young leaders being developed and up and coming,
Mhm.
but sort of speaking to just my own perspective, 30 years ago was almost every young person, really to some degree, is faking it till they make it. I mean, that's a phrase because it's in part some kind of reality. All right, fake it till you make it. And I'm really not a proponent of that. I don't have that perspective, but in terms of like, hey, so that's what you got to do. But I think also in reality, in part, that's what you are doing in your
Mhm.
early part of life because you don't have experience. One of the things I hated as a young leader was being told, well, you can't do this because you don't have experience. And I'm like, well, then how do I get experience? Where do you get this experience you speak of? Like somebody's got to give you an opportunity. So I love
Yeah.
giving young leaders opportunities. And, there's a study that I really embrace and believe in that just shows how do people develop? Okay.
Mhm.
And if development looks like three categories, and those three categories are on the job training,
Mhm.
formal training, and coaching or, a boss. And really what the study shows is 70% of our development and growth happens in just doing the job.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's true.
so you learn, you develop, you grow when you're doing a job. 20% actually happens through coaching, through a boss who's giving you reviews and helping to guide you through things. And then really just 10% is informal learning. And so
Mm.
I'm a big believer of courses, and of course you can learn a ton of stuff on YouTube or on podcasts. But what really can't be missed, and this is back to the point of like how you can't skip processes. So you may be able to get the 10% of learning that happens through a formal way of learning, but 90% is really done by you're doing a job and someone's coaching you in that job. Someone's helping you to develop in that job. And so I think there's such a premium in today's day and age put on young leadership, and some of that has to do with like how people want presented. They like leaders who
Mhm.
look a certain way or whatever, and that youth has a certain value in our culture. And so young leaders can get promoted to a place beyond their readiness. And the most foundational place of readiness is simply character.
Mhm.
And and when I think of character, I think the baseline, I mean the entry level character are things like integrity, honesty. So of course I'm talking about those things, but really that's like permission to play. Like to me, it's like well, if you don't have those as a barometer in your life, like okay, that's really baseline, basic character things. I then
Mhm.
start thinking, assuming those, then you start going, well, what is your home, right? The character of your home is actually the structure, the ability for the home to be able to not fall apart. And this is what
Mhm.
character of buildings are all of those things that actually keep it secure. And so when I think about young people being able to weather storms or
Mhm.
handle something happen in whatever organization they're leading, or let's just say a department they're leading, something begins to fall apart. Have you gone through the process of what it looks like to pick that up, to train a team how to navigate through storms and get on the other side of that? And those are things that are part of developing character that have nothing to do with honesty and integrity,
Mhm.
but it's still a part of character. And so I think sometimes when we speak of character, young leaders can go, I'm an honest person. I've got integrity. And so they go, I think I got the character box checked. I'm like, well, you got the baseline checked. Yeah, great. You need to. There's actually a much broader perspective of character that I think is only really gained through some of those, on the job, real time experiences.
So, don't you feel like it's our responsibility as mentors and people that have gone before them to pour back into them to kind of help them along the way. What does good accountability look like from a
Yeah.
leader?
Yeah. I think, well, it's interesting because one of the things I think about when I think about the fruit of our lives and the fruit of me as a leader, and I think about the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. And if I put all of those into a leadership package and think about all those that a leader should reflect, the fruit of me as a leader should reflect love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness. And I think the one thing we you could maybe look at all that and go, yeah, I want to be all that as a leader. But the very last one is self-control. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I think about developing and you combine self-control with a natural bent in our society or of people who really want to be leaders, who have a desire to lead, it's ambition.
Mm-hmm.
And ambition, really the Bible didn't have a lot of good things to say about ambition. Um,
Nope.
so so you can look at it and probably in our Western American culture, ambition is viewed as, yeah, those are the go-getters. Those are people who get stuff done. So there's a part of that I can make space for, okay, you want, driver, strong personalities, go get it. Great. I get it. But when you really put it up against a biblical context, ambition, where it can fly against is the process that God would take us through. And so I think the role of a leader, and I guess I want to say something that when I think about leadership, because I'm a church guy, I'm a church leader, I'm in that
Mhm.
space. But I actually look and believe every good leader, whether they're in the church space or they're not believers at all, but they're still good leaders. I think all of them have some aspect of a pastoral gift because
Mhm.
pastoring is about shepherding. It's about
Mhm.
a care for people. So I think good leaders, it's actually not far to take a good leader who might not be a believer and has no sort of biblical context, but yet they have an instinct to lead people. I think there's a pastoral gift. I don't know that every pastor is actually a good leader, though
Mhm.
there's that side of it. They're good shepherds and so forth. They might not be good leaders. I think every good leader has an aspect of a pastoral skill. So I think part of what leaders have to do when they're mentoring young people is have that shepherding view, which
Mhm.
at time is to help them gain perspective, to go, hey, this is where obviously coaching, you need to work on this, develop this, here's some areas you can grow in, and also be patient, have some
Mhm.
self-control of what it is you want to do. And what I believe is when God has a purpose and plan for our life, there's nothing that can be done to upend that. Even if things
Mhm.
come and take us off, and it seems like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. He's going to work it together. That Romans
Mhm.
8:20 is going to work it together for good for those who love him and called to his purpose. He's going to work it out. You can look at Joseph. Here he is. He thinks he's got his chance out in prison. Hey, you guys, if when you get out, don't forget to tell about me. And those guys forget to tell about him. He's 2 years. He's going. My destiny is sealed. That wasn't going to be. In fact, God was teeing up for the biggest success story that could have happened out of Joseph's
Mhm.
life coming out of prison. So I think leaders have to help young leaders be able to go, look, let's watch how God's forming this in your life. And the responsibility and accountability, I think, is on the leader. And
Right.
the accountability that's on the leader is this. Are we actually spending enough time prayerfully understanding how we should lead and mentor the people that we've been given charge over? And I think
Mhm.
there's a stewardship we have as leaders that we're going to be responsible for someday before God to go, hey, I brought that young leader under your oversight. What did you do to help develop them? What did you do
Mhm.
to help foster, and build and help form and forge the things that they needed training in? And so you gave them opportunity. That's the on the job training, but yet you also were present to be able to give them the encouragement and the correction and the discipline that was needed
Mhm.
at times that helped them grow. So I think it's so important for leaders to recognize that role. Again, I see some leaders who are in a leadership position. These are not people I would qualify as good leaders, and they just see themselves as the people who work for them are helping them accomplish their goal.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, on the base level, we're all working towards accomplishing a goal. So that's not fundamentally the problem. The problem is what that causes that leader, how to relate to those people. and it can make them a very uninvolved, disinterested kind of leader. So they're not developing that young person. And I think young people see that enough, and that actually is what causes them to go, okay, great, I just want to get in that position. So I go, and I don't, because I'm not getting that anyway. And I think I could do better, and I all this sort of thing. And I think that sort of feeds into it, as opposed to a proper stewardship that sees accountability of the leader to see part of their job to steward the people that they've been given responsibility over.
Let's talk to
Yeah.
the people that do not have that strong boss that doesn't see them. Instead, it's like, I heard one guy say this once, and he said the boss's name. He said, "If this person wins, we all win." And
Mm,
and it just became about that person
hmm.
instead of the team. And
Yeah.
so let's talk
Mm,
about a bad leader, because to me that's not a good leader.
yeah.
We're all important, we're all valuable, and everyone
Mm,
brings something to the team. So let's talk about, how do you deal with that?
yeah. Well, I think it's part of the empowerment I would love to give young leaders, no matter what position that they're in, is the power you have for your own development. And
Mhm.
every every leader that is brought into your world, if you have this perspective, and again, I recognize in this way, I'm really talking to faith oriented people. I'm talking to people who are believers. Then you can have this perspective. I ultimately work for God.
Mhm.
And so therefore, I can trust then whoever God brings into my orbit as a leader, or people I lead, and however he orchestrates that, he's going to use it for my development and
Right.
ultimately for his good. So even if I have a bad leader, there's something I can be learning. And there's
Mhm.
something that
Mhm.
and if anything, I'm learning what I don't want to do. I'm learning the kind of leader I don't want to be.
Uh,
And there are ways that I can think back, probably in the 7 years of my corporate job, is where I would say I probably had half and half of leaders that were good, some and others that I weren't great. And but I can look back to the things that I stored in my little tool chest of skill and development that happened equally for both the ones that I really admired and thought were good leaders and the ones that I didn't, because I had a perspective to go, I don't want to be like that. So there's that part of it of like, okay, I can still choose to learn.
mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
that's an area of pride that we have to really get, like, who can I and can't I learn from?
Mhm.
Well, if I have a perspective of who I can't learn from, then to me that's some seedbed of pride. I think I can learn from anybody, even if it's
Amen.
learning what not to do. There's still something I can do to
Exactly.
learn.
Yes.
But the other empowering thing I would say, so I heard there's a guy named Dr. Mark Rutland, very strong leaders, led universities, led churches, and I heard him in a leadership time, and he was talking about being a mentor, and he had a very strong perspective that he was like, look, I grew up in an age where, you know, uh, mentor wasn't a noun, you got mentored, and it was a verb. And he said, I didn't have a person that I ever thought was my mentor. Actually, he goes, I had mentors that I never, ever expected I would sit with. He was like,
Mhm.
my mentors were authors that I read, things that biographies of leaders that I admired and knew. And those people mentored me.
Oh,
Never
that's
one
good.
time did I expect I would sit with that person and they would actually speak to me. And he had a very strong, he was like, how arrogant of me to think that person should speak into my life. I got to go find that person. Now, I don't necessarily carry all these views about that mentoring role, but what it did is it spoke an empowerment to me. And that's what I would say to anybody watching or listening, is the empowerment. You go, I don't know who that is in my life. I got a bad boss. I don't have anybody else who I know to go to mentor me. Well, let me take away the what feels disempowering about that and go, you can be mentored by
Mhm.
any number of people. You can be mentored via this podcast. You could be
Mhm.
mentored via other things I find on YouTube. You can be mentored by books. Those are a mentoring process. Just because you don't have a person that you would put a label of a mentor, which I think is
Mhm.
a good thing to have. But if you don't have that, don't feel like
Mhm.
you're lost. Don't feel like therefore I can't I I put such a premium on having a mentor that when I don't, I feel like I'm losing. No, I don't think it has
Mhm.
to be that way. So you can be learning even from bad leaders, and you can be learning when you don't have an identified mentor in your life, because the mentoring process can occur through any number of avenues and ways. And so I would just encourage young leaders. again, I am an advocate. If you can find someone who you can have as a mentor and they're speaking in your life, wonderful. But if that doesn't happen, don't be discouraged. God will still
Mhm.
find his way when you are searching it out to mentor you. And it can still
Mhm.
happen.
Mhm. And also through the Holy Spirit, because we both are believers. I mean,
Exactly.
he is the biggest mentor for me.
I think part of the sad reality of it is a lot of people don't think to go to the Lord because they really
Yeah.
don't spend the time.
Yeah.
Or their perspective of a quiet time is reading the Bible and then sending their list up to the Lord of stuff. He's like their assistant. Here's stuff I need you to do today. Take care of this. Would you do this? Da, da, da. Okay, see, I'm out of here. As opposed to
Oh,
listening, if you view the Lord in my time of prayer of going, I'm going to the commander. I don't have a clue what I'm supposed to do today until the
yeah.
commander gives me the marching orders. Here's what I want you to do. Boom, 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 boom. Well, when I view my time with the Lord as that, now I'm getting marching orders. I'm getting my direction from Him.
Hmm.
Okay, now I can be mentored by the Holy Spirit. I mean,
Hmm.
hello, there's no one who's going to know everything, and then very specifically know me and
Uh-huh.
know the everything going on around me, and but I think really, if we're all really honest, where we cut ourselves off at the legs in that way, anyways, we just don't spend the time with Him to
To hear
to
his
to
voice.
listen. What you grow and develop in over time, and as you age, you start realizing, oh, what I was rock solid sure of at 24, I don't know about that. At 43 or 45, I now see that a little bit different. It's a little grayer. I'm not as sure. It's like the things you're sure about get really certain, and you realize there's a lot more things that aren't so sure and certain, and a lot of things are they're quite circumstantial. And I
Hmm.
can I can approach a leadership thing through, well, I need to know more, because you know that context matters, and you know that those kind of
Hmm.
things matter. And so, yeah, but including understanding other people's journeys.
Hmm.
And that's one of the big things I think as a leader is, man, to really spend time to understand, man, what's been a person's journey, and what's been a person's, that some people may go, man, I can't go back into their that far into their life and so forth. But man, some studies would show, when if you really understand, of course, you get this in marriage stuff or whatever, but like a family of origin, like where you really come from,
Hmm.
what that upbringing was like, and you want to get a complete window into why a person is how they are today, that kind of understanding. Can't always go that far back, but the point being, to get a better context of a person helps us not be judgmental, certainly reduces pride that we have in our life, and I think it helps guard our heart to go, you know what, I want my heart to be, the soil of my heart to be so open to understand
Hmm.
people in such a way that I appreciate all the different ways that people are designed. They're all gifts from God. God's wired these people. That doesn't mean everybody's perfect, but I can appreciate people, and I've learned to appreciate the variety, the spectrum of God's people,
Hmm.
in the kind of people that I lead, way better than I might have whenever I was just getting started.
That's true. And I've learned so much from people. So
Amen. Yes.
before we sign off today, I just want you to talk to that young leader that's afraid to step out in faith,
Mm,
and
mhm,
God is calling them maybe to a different position.
mm.
Just what would you say to them? Because I think that you're right. I think so many people freeze. They stay.
Yeah,
And so what would you say to somebody that's stuck today? And let's finish with that question.
it's great. Yeah, really, I want to jump on the word faith, and maybe ask every person to evaluate in their own life, what does faith look like today for you? And I'll just talk from a personal journey. I
Mhm.
was at a season where, this is just a few years ago, and
Mhm.
change was happening in my life, and like anybody, I was like going, oh, I don't know if I like this change. I don't know if this is good. And as I was praying about it, I had this picture. I felt like the Lord was giving me this picture of my heart, but my heart was like a cave. And in the
Mhm.
back of this cave was this treasure box, and it was covered in dust and cobwebs. It's like it hadn't been opened. It's like a treasure hunt kind of thing. Like, oh wow.
Mhm.
And it was like God was taking me on the journey. And we get to this treasure box, and it's like God lifted it up and He goes, "This has been faith in your heart." And He blew on it, dusted it off, dusted off the cobwebs, and He said, "We're bringing faith to the forefront of your heart."
Mhm.
And I'd give that picture for someone to maybe consider, where is faith in your heart? And I don't
Mm,
mean faith as like your salvation faith or trust in the Lord. I mean faith as far as the next thing. What is God pushing you to do? What's something that He's put in your heart, but you're like, what's the right next action? How do I do this? What step do I take? And that idea of feeling stuck. I believe whenever if it's God's timing, now there might be times where we're not actually stuck. We're actually just in a moment of waiting. And there is a difference. And the
mm,
difference is the moment of waiting is God hasn't brought you to the next thing. Well, that takes
mhm,
patience. That takes contentment. That takes a waiting.
mhm,
But there are moments then when we're stuck, and the difference is there's a next step that God's given you to do. And sometimes what we want as people, we want to know the big picture. We want to know everything, like
mhm,
what am I stepping into? And I think very seldom does God give us that. Now, sometimes He may give someone a big vision, and that's what you're stepping into. Most people, He just tells you to take the next step. And
yeah.
sometimes that's the hardest thing to do because you just don't know what that next step is leading you to. But that next step and not taking it is what is keeping you stuck. And so that place of faith, that faith being brought to the forefront of your heart, I just would encourage you today that there's going to be great joy in stepping out in faith. That we know that faith pleases God, and so those steps of faith. Someone may go, "Well, what if I step out and do the wrong thing?" I just want to tell you what I believe. When your heart is submitted to God, you're prayerful about what you want to do, and you take the step you feel God's leading you to take. If by chance you just happen to get it wrong, I think God goes, okay, let me redirect you to the next thing. In other words,
Mhm,
it's not, I don't think it's going to work out wrong for you. There may be, he may detour, may have to take another thing like this,
mhm.
but God will reward. He rewards faith, faithful, faith-filled steps. So man, I just want to encourage somebody. There may be a step of
Mhm,
faith, and it's just one step. You have no idea what that's going to unlock. And so,
mhm,
for a young leader, evaluate: Am I in a moment of waiting? And that's okay because God's
mhm,
got you in a holding pattern. Don't
mhm,
don't don't fast forward out of that place because that's
mhm,
when we run out of pace with God. That's a
mhm,
problem. And so you might be stuck, or in the holding pattern, different than being stuck. If you're stuck, but God's giving you a next step, you just don't know what do I take that? Well,
mhm.
take the step that you feel He's calling you to take, and then watch Him unfold all the things that are part of the next season for you.
That's good. And I also want to just add, and the people that are older like me that's retired from a career, take the next step because God has something for you, right?
Yes,
We're
look at
never
exactly.
too
Look at
old.
this. Look at this season for you, right? This is it's wonderful. What a
Hey,
great
hey,
next step, and all the
I
fruit that
know.
God's bringing about because of
I
it.
know. So I think God always has a plan no matter where we are.
Yeah,
And I love that your
yeah.
grandfather said that he was still dreaming in his late 70s.
Amen.
I hope
Yep.
that's me. And
Yes.
I hope I'm doing the same thing. So I
Yes.
thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing your heart
Absolutely.
and your leadership. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows how to get in touch with you and how to glean even more um, talents or
Mhm.
information or products that you might have in your leadership program. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Great being with you. Honored to get to have this conversation. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Hello, friends. I just want to take a moment and thank you for joining us today with Ministry with Coffee. We're so glad that you're here. And I want to ask that if this has moved you or encouraged you, the story that you just listened to today, that you would like our page and that you would share our page with your friends and your family. Together, if we work together, we can share the gospel of Jesus throughout the world at one cup, one story at a time. Thank you again for your support. We are so glad that you have chosen to minister and partner with us. Thank you again.